Track 6 is called Empty Space. Every time I listen to this song, I think it's just because I guess maybe I've watched the music video enough to, like, see it in my head, I guess. But when the song was playing, the first thing I thought of was the music video that it just started playing in my head. It's just like a live recording of them, like, performing this song. But everybody's, like, jumping at the part when it goes, like, that. And you can just, like, anytime that I, like, hear that song now, I just think of, like, everybody jumping in the crowd. Because that's what I see
like
in the music
little,
video.
the snare hi-hat, and then it bumps in. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the song that has the album title in it. He says, make up for lost ground and see what you don't see.
Yeah, I've got a couple thoughts. So just as background, so this is their most played song on the album. So this is the one that has 40 million streams, at least on Spotify. I'm assuming it's probably going to be this, similar for other services. So this album, Empty Space, was like apparently D1. A couple of things that I really like vocally in the very intro lyrics. He says, all that I know is your space is empty, it's buried below, the stress and the envy. And then he keeps going. But the vocal melody of this is really cool because he basically matches, or he bounces up to the higher note and then goes back down to the lower notes and bounces back up and bounces back down. He does that a couple of different places throughout this song. Just the vocal melody, I think, is really good. How he like mirrors, he repeats a lot of the same vocal melodies throughout these different lines. And I think it's really cool. There's a couple other parts in this song, like I said, where he does that, or other songs as well. But this one specifically, those opening lines, I think that vocal melody is really, really cool, how he goes up to those high notes and then goes back down and then jumps back up, goes back down, jumps back up. And then the other part that I really liked about this is the contrast between the first and the second verse. So the first verse is much more chill. It's just got like a light drum kind of beat with just a lead guitar, basically, for the first half of the first verse. But then after the first chorus, you jump into the second verse. It's very open with big guitars, and bass is really, really good on this part of the song as well during the second verse. Again, I'm always, I notice contrast in songs, especially between the first and second verses is obviously the biggest kind of place that happens. But this song, super, super good example where after that first verse, after the first chorus, just like you mentioned with the intro, there's like a slight drop and then it kicks back in really hard. And it's just a huge, loud, really good second verse, which is a cool contrast because the first verse, again, is very chill, very low-key. So really, really good composition, again, in my opinion, on the difference in the contrast between the first and second verse. It makes the second verse much more powerful when you have that lighter first verse because you're still having the same vocal notes and melodies, so it's familiar, but everything else around it is like way bigger and way louder and much more energy. So I really like this song for that reason as well. It's got very good kind of composition and structure throughout there.
Yeah. While you were saying that, I remembered, I really like in the chorus when he says, I dwell on it nightly, tread swiftly and lightly, make up the lost ground. I really like the way he emphasizes his notes, or the way he emphasizes the words when he sings them. He says, I dwell on it nightly, tread swiftly and lightly, make up the lost ground. I really like just what he chooses to emphasize, and it just like makes everything sound so much cooler.
Yeah, I totally agree. Similar with jumping back to Small Talk when, at least I think it's this one, when he says bites back with broken teeth. It's like that, how that lyric always sticks out. Same with this song for Empty Space. The dwell on it nightly, tread swiftly and lightly. That's also like a big standout thing where every time I hear that, it's pretty prominent. So I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I'm surprised and not surprised that it's their biggest one on the album, streaming-wise. It has the most plays.
I wonder if it was a single at the time. It probably was. I mean, they do also have a music video for it, so maybe it was.
Yeah, that's probably true. It probably just has more exposure that way. Yeah, overall, it's not my favorite song on the track or on the album.
Yeah,
but it does have some good parts in it. So I guess it was kind of surprising to me that was like the biggest one. I was like, oh, okay, like I can see why, but for me, it just didn't hit as hard.
Track 7 is called The Glass. I don't know where I read. I have watched and read so many stories so far, interviews and things that like I don't even know where my information comes from anymore. But I know that The Glass, Parker claimed that it was his favorite song at one point, and I thought that was pretty cool. I do love the lyrics in this song. Just the way he like writes his words are just so cool. I don't know. I'm not so open like the window you are. The glass just reflects the scar. That's so cool. Like, who writes like that? There's so much imagery there, and there's just so much, like, thought. Your glare is the faintest, no brightness to show. You were the spade I used to dig this hole. There was a t-shirt a long time ago when I was first getting into them that had that on the back of it. It was like, I think there was a spade on the shirt. But it just, like, had, like, this roundabout words that said, you were the spade I used to dig this hole, blistered my skin to the bone. He just has his words are just so cool. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like the chorus as well. I didn't even notice it until reading them just now as you brought them up, how those choruses, your glare is the faintest, no brightness to show. You were the spade I used to dig this hole, blistered my skin to the bone. That's pretty cool. I didn't really catch those before. So I really like those thoughts that you had there. The only notes that I had from a musical perspective is the opening riff to this song is really, really good. So it starts off with like that warbly, and it kind of brings it in for a second, and then it brings in the actual lead guitar part that they use throughout different parts of the song. So it's got a really solid lead intro that I really like. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is it has a really, really good outro. It's probably the second best outro, which I'll get to the best one. I'll say the best for last. But this one has a really, really good outro, again, for the overall building of it. This is the outro portion that he sings. He sings the lyrics over and over, now you're gone. But he holds out the word gone at a higher note, if you remember that.
Yeah.
So that's the context for this one here. The build-up to that one is really, really good because during the last chorus, blistered my skin to the bone. Then it does a big power chord, and then it kind of is fading out. And then you hear the opening riff playing in there to kind of fill the empty space. And then you hear the drums kick in with this really fast snare, really, really technical. Does these accents on these weird parts. And then it kicks in really fast. And then it goes into the lyrics, now you're gone. Just the whole buildup of this outro is really, really solid. Not only because it starts off with that long note, just the lead guitar playing, and then the soft drum snare coming in, and then it gets more and more aggressive, faster and faster, and then it kicks in with all the instruments, and then halfway through, when all the instruments come in, it kicks it up even more because the drums start playing extra snares and in more places and kind of upping the tempo a little bit or upping the feel of it, rather. And it's just really, really solid outro overall. Story So Far has a lot of awesome, really, 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 really awesome outros.
Yeah.
Another one that comes to mind is on a different album is, I think it's Daughters, I think is the one I'm thinking of, where it has a really, really long, like half the song is basically the outro.
Right. But
really, really, really good build-up, really, really solid execution on that latter half, tons of energy. So anyway, I'm seeing some of that DNA here in this song with the build-ups to the outro. They have a lot of songs that have really, really good build-ups in their outros, which sound really sick. So that was all I had for this one. Nothing else too crazy. Just really like the musical riff that you hear in the beginning, and then the outro sections, and then really, really nice outro with the gradual build-up. Really, really good.
Next track 8, is called All Wrong. This is actually my favorite song on the album. This was one of the songs that we didn't have on our computer. I don't know why we didn't have this one. But when I heard it, I was like, wow, I love this song more than all the other songs that we have. But I wrote down, I don't know what this means, but I wrote down, I love the melody and guitar. This is also the only song that leads into the next one, which I thought was cool. I think I don't know if we had Bad Luck, downloaded into our music. Because we only had, a handful of songs from, each album, I feel like. And so I never heard, the flow into the next song. I guess we'll get to that later. But, yeah, I really like this song. And I think I really like the melody because, mostly in the chorus probably, just when he says, it's no fun to play this song, so I'm done. You said I got it all wrong, but I'm sure everything we did before doesn't really matter anymore. I don't know, it just has, this fun, bouncy, vibe to it.
This song is their third most played on this album, which was kind of surprising. I'm not the biggest fan of the chorus. Usually the chorus for music is the big kicker and selling point, which is kind of true for most songs. It's the thing you hear 4 times, 3 times every song. This one didn't capture me with that, but I really do like the post-chorus, which might be what you're referring to with the lead guitar, where it just bounces it kind of bounces around with this. Oh
yeah.
If that's what you're referring to,
Yeah,
I really
probably.
like that part. Is a really good lead for kind of the post-chorus and leading into the verses and stuff. I really like that portion of it. And then the only other thing, which you already mentioned as well, is I really like the drum outro that leads into the next song, Bad Luck. I think listening through this album was the first time I actually heard the songs back to back. I knew they led into each other, but when I listened through this most recent time, I was like, oh, like that was actually like a really clean. It comes right into it. I think before, when I listened to them, maybe it was just old versions of iTunes or something, but there was always like slight gaps between the songs or something, so I never got the full effect. But this time around, I was like, oh, like that actually sounds really good. So I like that little kind of back room sounding drums, and then it kicks in with the actual present drums for the next song. So that was the only other part I wanted to mention. This one, for whatever reason, it wasn't my favorite song, but it streaming wise, number wise, people like this one as one of the top ones. So I'm curious as to what I'm missing.
Right. But I feel like for some reason this is also like one of like the track on the album that's like not different, but like the vibe of it is kind of different. And I don't really know exactly what I mean by that, but like I've always just felt like this song was kind of like not necessarily the outcast of the album, but it just like it doesn't mesh as, I don't know, like the vibe is just different, I feel like, which is like fine, but I think maybe I've always felt that it's been like different than the other songs on the album, so maybe that's like why you don't vibe with it as much. I don't know. There was a song the part I was just thinking of lyric wise, I think it's the bridge. He says, caught you leaving, you were high in the ceiling on your own, dodge your demons, take your reasons with you when you go. I love the energy, like the power he puts on his voice and some of those words. When he says, caught you leaving, you were high in the ceiling on your own, and he says, dodge your demons, take your reasons with you. I love the way that he emphasizes his words and his notes in different parts of songs and stuff. I think he has a very masterful way of performing. Track 9, Bad Luck. This one again leads into from All Wrong. The only thing I wrote down was I wrote the lyrics, I'm the book you always open but you never read. Dude, I freaking love the way he writes. That's so cool. It's like not even that cool, but just his metaphors again is like just the way that he writes things by not saying exactly what he's saying, but like you understand what he's saying. I don't know. It's so cool how he writes. I don't know.
Yeah, I for the longest time I didn't really listen to this song for whatever reason. It never caught my attention the first time I was getting introduced to this album and everything. More recently, and I say that as in like maybe the past few years, I remember adding this to my playlist at one point, and I really like again, this is going along with their outros. They have really, really solid outros. This song is another one that has a lot of energy because it's kind of like what you mentioned earlier where Parker's screaming on key, or yelling on key, is that how you described it? I think the outro is a really good example of this because basically the entire outro is him singing at the same note, essentially. When he starts the lyrics, says, maybe that's the reason I was never enough, because all I do is chalk it up to bad luck. And then he continues on, but basically just throughout those lines, he basically just sings the same note the whole time, which is cool, because instead of it being more musical, it's almost like obviously the lyrics are kind of a little bit heavier, how just that line, maybe that's the reason I was never enough, is like kind of this like self-deprecating, like, telling himself he was never enough, and all he does is chalk it up to bad luck, it's like, it's just kind of this self-deprecating thing. I could just imagine him like yelling this to himself, like just kind of this internal conflict of feeling like you're not good enough and having that self-doubt, and maybe it's just because of bad luck and all this stuff. So I really like it musically, from the lyrics, his vocal style during this part where he's singing the same note over and over, and then also just the whole outro has a lot of good energy to this one. Also has some good build up as it builds into that. So those are my main takeaways from this song. I think the ending, the outro portion, is kind of what sold me on this song.
Track 10 is called Face Value. Again, with just his lyrics, just right in the beginning, I let the furnace of my anger heat where you lay. It never burned you, it just kept the cold at bay. I just am so baffled. It's awesome. I love the way that he writes his words and like spits them out, and I really like the end of this song. The last word, then he says me. All of the plans that you made never included me. Just like the power on the last word, and also just the fact that he separated it from the rest of the verse, or like the rest of the phrase. All of the plans that you made never included me. And I love the way that they executed that last line, because he says it a lot throughout the song. But
yeah.
What are your thoughts on the song?
Yeah, kind of like how it's literally the word me is not included in that vocal line, so it's kind of like this, again, like that roundabout way of saying, you know, all the plans that you made never included me, but he leaves out the word me and, you know, has to tag it on at the end. So it's like, oh, like I see what you did there. Like me was literally not included in that, set of lyrics. So cool. It's kind of clever with the way that kind of meshes together. This is one of the songs I actually didn't have any particular notes on. I think this is, again, one of those songs that I didn't really vibe with in the beginning. I picked it up later on as my taste in music grew, and I kind of re-listened to this album at one point. And I did end up adding this one to my playlist, but this one's not a big standout to me compared to some of the other songs. So I really don't have anything crazy to say about this one. I'm a little bit newer to the game with this song, like I said. So
yeah. Cool. Last track, called Framework. I didn't know about this song for the longest time. Again, it was just not one that we had, and so I just never listened to it until I found the rest of the songs. I wrote down that I love the subject matter in this song. I guess just lyric wise, I really I especially love the second verse when he says, "Can't ever sever the ties I made, the knots are strong, the framework's laid. No matter how many things I save, the tangible will always be what I crave. Oh, but I've been resting cases and writing just to erase this. It used to just seem so basic when I knew every single word to say." There's 3 different songs in this album that talks about him writing things, or talks about his songs, or just him as a lyricist, I guess, just him writing and producing, making music and stuff. And I think that was really cool. Just that little bit in there that he says, it used to just seem so basic when I knew every single word to say. And there's just this moment in his happen that's this, what did I just say? This moment in his life now when later on he's saying that, I am assuming he's talking about a girl, when he's how'd this happen, found your way in, and it's distracting him and stuff. I don't know, I love the way that he wrote the words in this song, and talking about this girl that he had at one point, and he's, being distracted by thinking about her and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to make the same comments on the second verse, which says, "Can't it sever the ties I made, the knots are strong, the framework's laid." I really like the next lines going along with the theme of him being away, or feeling like he's missing out, where he says, "No matter how many things I save, the tangible will always be what I crave." So obviously he wants to be there in person, or he wants to have that relationship in person, and it doesn't matter how many things he saves, whether it's pictures on his phone, or cards, or whatever other physical or digital things he can save. It's not enough. He wants to be there in person. He wants to be present. He doesn't want to miss out on things. So I liked how you brought up that theme. That was something that I was struggling with as I was listening through, as I was trying to identify different themes or things that he touches on a lot. I was able to do that with Proper Dose, their other album, which I had a lot more thoughts on lyrically. But this song, as far as the lyrics go, that was the main part I wanted to touch on. I have some other musical things that I can jump into, but if you have other thoughts first, you can.
That was mostly my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, the only other part I wanted to talk about was the second award that I wanted to give the album for best, or this song gets best outro. And so again, going along with some of the themes I've talked about musically, where Story So Far has some really good outros to their songs. This one definitely takes the cake on this album. So it's the same structure as the intro to the song, so it's the same kind of progressions and stuff. But this song on the outro, give me just one sec, I gotta listen to a portion of it to remember where it kicks in. Oh yeah, it's after all of the lyrics. Okay. Yeah, so this kicks in again, it kind of ends with a chord, and then you hear the intro lead guitar, or whatever it's doing, and then it comes in, with the buildup of the drums, the snare hitting the cymbals at the same time. And then it punches in really big with all the instruments for a few bars going through. And then it does something fairly unique in pop punk music. It's not, they didn't invent this or anything, and it's definitely present in other places, but specifically in the drums for this part of the second half of the outro, the pattern or the power really kicks in because he starts playing the bass drum at the same time as the snare drum, which is not a very common thing to do. Usually, especially in choruses and other parts, it's pretty rare that you hit the bass drum at the exact same time as the snare drum. Unless you're doing some crazy like metal blast beats or you're doing like double pedal, like that would be a little bit more common. But when it comes to just your basic groove of whatever you're playing, it's pretty uncommon to hit the bass and the snare at the same time. So the second half of this outro, he starts doing just that, where he plays the bass and the snare at the same time, along with smashing the crash cymbals every time. It's just this really big, like, gut punch every single time the main beats come in, and basically the beats that you'd be like headbanging along to, and like, you know, throwing your body forward with every kind of big spike of energy. Mm-hmm. That's when he starts, you know, adding in this bass drum. So really, really sick as far as how it elevates the whole buildup of the outro, even though he's technically playing kind of the same thing. Just adding that little bit of extra punch with that bass drum, along with the accents of the snare, it is really, really awesome. Again, not super, super common. You can find it every now and then on different albums from different bands, but really, really nice way to have the outro of this song. Obviously, as it's the last track of the album, it's a really nice way to end, you know, have this bookend of the album with, they've had really solid outros throughout, but then this is like the big one. So again, this one gets my reward, or rather my award for best outro on the album. Really, really solid way of composing that and giving it that extra punch with the drums specifically. So just wanted to shout that one out. That was pretty much it as far as the song.
Oh, something I did want to mention is I do appreciate how much the guitarist, his name is Kevin Geyer, the lead guitarist. He does all the riffs and stuff. I really appreciate how much he lends his vocals on this album, because he doesn't sing backup as much, like as often anymore in their two most recent albums, which I really am like sad about, because I love Kevin's voice and I love his he sings a lot. I feel like on their first album, Under Soil and Dirt, he has a lot of just like background stuff. I feel like Kevin does that quite a bit on this album, which I really love, because he doesn't do it very much anymore, which I'm sad about, because I really like his voice. I love Kevin Geyer. That was my point. Do you have like a number, if you were to give this album a number out of 10?
I would give it two numbers. So again, I'm on the same page with you as far as it not being my favorite album, but it is the most influential into what got me into the story so far, and kind of pop punk in general, as I was kind of going towards that in junior high and high school. So from like a favorite perspective, if I were to give it a rating, there's a few really good songs. Again, Small Talk is like S tier. Like that song is so good. Like I never skip that song when it comes on. But then a lot of the other ones, they don't quite fit with my style of music. So if I were to give it a rating, I'd say overall the album probably gets like a 5 out of 10 for me, maybe a 6.
Yeah.
It's definitely got some good stuff, but it's not my favorite from just a listening perspective. Like if I'm just going to put on some music to jam to, this album is not typically going to be the go-to.
Yeah.
But from an influential standpoint, this is obviously like one of the big albums of like this time frame of pop punk. So this is 11 years ago. Gosh. But this album was definitely like huge for the story so far and for pop punk in general. So from an influential standpoint, it's probably going to be closer to like an 8 probably.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I could be totally off on that. I'm not like a professional music reviewer or anything, but from my perspective of all the music that I listen to, I would say this is probably, this is going to be one of the top dogs when people talk about it. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was thinking that same thing when those same types of numbers. I was thinking like a 6, but I feel like even that's generous. I don't know. Maybe I would give it a 4. I don't even know. I don't know.
Yeah, I would stick with like the 4 or 5 range personally. Yeah. Which is unfortunate because after talking about all the musical stuff, there's some really, really sick guitar parts and drums throughout. Like musically, composition wise and everything, I would give it much higher ratings. Yeah. But just from a personal enjoyment, like, oh yeah, like I want to listen to this album. Yeah, it's more like a 4 or 5 probably.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, I feel like this band even, everybody talks about really highly. Like when their newest album, I Want to Disappear, came out, everybody, I was looking on Reddit and stuff, and everyone was talking about how like disappointed they were with the production. I don't remember if they were talking about drums or guitars, but like they were just really like not pleased with like the quality of the work, I guess, because The Story So Far has made themselves to be so technical and so like awesome that like for some reason people didn't like love the sounds or love the way that I guess that everything was produced on this most recent record, which I like kind of agree, but I also am not super into like most people were talking about like the drums, or there was just like an overall like disappointment with the musicality of the album, I guess. And so anyway, I just like, yeah, The Story So Far has just made themselves to be just this one of the kings of pop punk, I think, and I love that.
I had a couple of main things that I want to talk about, some in regards to this album and then others just generally in regards to The Story So Far. The first thing I wanted to mention about the musicalness of this album, I really enjoy their rhythm guitar. The tone of it specifically, it's uniquely more like trebly, kind of more electric sounding, almost more, not brittle, that usually has a negative connotation. It still sounds good, but I just really like the bite that the electric guitar has for the rhythm. Again, specifically going to the song Small Talk during the second verse, when it cuts in and out and everything, is just the tone of the rhythm is really, really good. It's fairly unique. There's not a lot of other albums I've listened to where it's as trebly as it is on this one. At least that's how it feels. So it's just something I wanted to point out. I really enjoy the tone of the rhythm guitar in this album is fairly unique. I don't feel like there's too many other albums I could say that about when it comes to the higher or lighter tone of it, but it's got a lot of bite to it. It sounds really, really good. I already mentioned about the bass throughout this whole album is really, really solid. And 2 other random unrelated kind of memories or just things about The Story So Far that I thought would be fun to share about.
Yeah.
So my very first live concert that I went to was, it was actually headlined by The Story So Far. Our brother Chris and I went when I was probably sophomore or something. But we went to go see 4 Year Strong mainly. They were the act right before The Story So Far. This was probably back in 2012 or so, 2013. Well, it had to have been in 2013 because they played some of the songs from this album. Probably 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. Went to go see 4 Year Strong, and after they played their set and everything, we stuck around for most of The Story So Far since they were the headlining act, but we really wanted to only see 4 Year Strong, but we ended up sticking around and kind of more towards the back and listening to The Story So Far play their live set. And this was actually at the time their self-titled came out too, because I got a shirt of that self-titled album, which I have a story about that I want to talk about as well.
Yeah.
But I was really, really impressed with The Story So Far live because it sounded exactly the same as how it sounded on the album. So like when they were playing a certain song, from what you don't see, again, they have very unique lead guitars throughout this whole album. And when they were playing the lead part and then it kicked in with everything else, I was like, holy crap, like that sounded exactly the same as it did on the album. Like I was really impressed with how good they sounded live. Because this was obviously my first show, so I just assumed that obviously with this type of music, it's going to be like super overblown and way too loud and really muddy and whatever. But I was super, super surprised when I was listening there live in person. I was like, holy crap, like they sound really good live. Like I was really blown away. And so that was just like a random memory that I had of them being my first concert, but I didn't even go to see them. We only stuck around for like half their set and then left probably because we only wanted to see 4 Year Strong. But going back, I totally would have stayed and been more present for their set. But that was just one random thing that I wanted to mention as far as them being my first concert, technically.
Yeah.
And just how good they sounded live. I don't know if you have thoughts or experiences about seeing them live or anything that you wanted to talk about.
Not specifically. I've seen them live like 4 or 5 times, but
oh wow,
they're my favorite band of all time. So I don't. You knew that, right? I would assume.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one other random memory that I'll share,
Yeah.
and then if you have any others, you can share too. But
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want too much of your time. But going along with the how I got that shirt from their self-titled album, so it's basically just their album cover on like a dark blue kind of shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously at the venue, I'm pretty sure it was at the Nile in Arizona, this small brick square room, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's the Nile.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought that shirt from their self-titled album, and it smelled like weed because obviously everybody in there is smoking. So like that was kind of a bummer. Like as I walked out, I was like holding the shirt, I like smelled it, and I was like, oh man, this shirt smells like weed. Like that sucks. But I wore it to school the next day. Even though it smelled bad, I didn't wash it, but I wanted to wear it because I just went to the concert the night before. And so I had a couple of my friends that I saw that first thing in the morning, and they were like, oh dude, like you like the story so far? I was like, oh yeah, like I actually just went to the concert last night, like that's why I'm wearing the shirt. And so we were talking about that, and that was cool because I didn't know that they really listened to them. This was kind of the first introduction that I had with my close friends that I hung out with every day.
Mm-hmm.
Us talking about music, because we ended up talking about all the same types of music and bands that we all liked, and I was like, what the heck, like why did we never talk about this?
Yeah.
Like we listened to all the exact same stuff. So that was kind of a cool little icebreaker, I guess, between them. But the real kind of kicker of the story that I wanted to tell was in seminary. It had nothing to do with me smelling like weed, but I was just self-conscious about that the whole day because I knew it smelled like weed. But I was sitting in seminary. It was either that day or a future time I wore the shirt. I don't remember. But we had like some kind of big combined seminary thing. It was like seminary general conference or just some kind of big combined thing where all the classes were part of the same thing, and they were doing some big group thing for seminary. And I was sitting there in my chair, and this kid is in the same grade as me. His name was Tanner Lewis. I don't know if you knew him. He was a baseball player.
That name
you might
sounds
not.
familiar.
But anyway, his name was Tanner as well. But me and him we were never friends. We had similar-ish friends, kind of on the outskirts, but we never had direct friend groups. We never had any like real beef with each other or anything like that, but we both had the name Tanner, and we had the same classes all the time. So I was like, oh, like Tanner L and Tanner B, right? You know? But I was sitting in seminary, and he ends up sitting like right next to me, and he looks over and sees me wearing that shirt that I got from the concert. He was like, dude, you like the story so far? I was like, yeah, like I went to the concert a little bit ago. He's like, oh my gosh, like he started freaking out. He's like, why didn't I know this sooner? Like we would have been best friends. And so he started talking to me about how like he really liked the story so far, and it was just funny because like I said, we were never friends, but we never really had beef with each other, but there was just always that like weird awkwardness because we had the same name and everything. But then we like totally broke the ice from there, and he's like, dude, he started asking me, he's like, dude, do you listen to like Beartooth? I was like, no, I don't really listen to Beartooth, but I know of them.
Right.
And some other random bands that he had mentioned, but we were kind of had that similar taste in music, and we were both just kind of like, you know, smacking our heads on our foreheads, being like, oh my gosh, like if only we had known each other, or like known that we liked the same music before, we would have maybe actually been friends and like talked about it and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was just like a fun random little memory I have of getting that shirt, and then that being like this little gateway into like this like mini friendship of like, oh my gosh, like I love this band too, and talking about all these things.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a fun little memory that I had.
Yeah, I just love when merch brings people together. Like that similarity is fun. Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the pod.
Of course.
We'll catch you guys on next week. Peace out.